then we give them a pass. So how do you correct it? I use a 4-step progression. First off, we try to restore centration of the joint. Secondly, we activate the psoas without gravitational or as little global muscle activity as possible. Then we start to bring gravity back into the mix, and then we try to put it all back together into full range activities. So the first thing we do to help restore centration is capsular mobility. So you're going to do some micro mobility stuff maybe. Potentially you can do your dynamic lunges, that kind of thing, to open up the psoas. Next, we'll mobilize the psoas. We'll have somebody get into the soft tissue. We'll prescribe some stretching. Mike Boyle did a great article a while back called Understanding Hip Flexion that can show you a few good stretches and that kind of thing. Lastly, we will try to improve the internal rotation range of motion, so supine knee-to-knee stretching, kneeling rock backs. There's a gamut of internal rotation improvement drills. Lastly, we will check and address the piriformis and the other hip rotators for their effect in butt gripping. Diane Lee's book, The Pelvic Girdle, shows a couple great drills that can be done without any manual interaction to help reseat the femoral head using tennis balls, and also a couple TheraBand exercises, which may or may not be helpful. One interesting one that I've recently seen was just a plain old lateral distraction of the hip. You can read more about that in the Journal of Orthopedic and Sports Physical Therapy. Next, we progress into activation drills. So first, we try to limit gravity effects and also assistance from other big muscles. Rectus femoris, TFL, that kind of thing. So we start in supine. We have the client pull their knee above 90 degrees of hip flexion and hold for a period of time. It's important to note that it doesn't have to be a maximal contraction, so you want to monitor for the position of the lumbar spine while they're doing these. They don't need to be flattening out. They don't need to be getting a whole lot of activity from those global muscles. You can progress with your feet elevated prone, so you'll have somebody in a position where their feet are higher than their hands, and then you bring full range of motion without the gravitational impact. Activate the psoas, go back, repeat the process. Again, it's important to monitor the activation of the other global muscles. They're going to be somewhat active, obviously, because they are hip flexors, but it doesn't need to be such a straining effort that everything seems to be at about 100% MVC. The second step is you're going to bring gravity back into the equation. Most of our stuff, most of locomotion occurs with gravity impacting hip flexion. So it's important to bring that back in. What we'll do is the seated psoas test now becomes our training method. So the same things apply as the test. You want to avoid sideways shifting, backwards leaning, hip hiking, that kind of thing, and just to activate the psoas. Also, you can place the hand of your client's hand distally on the leg for additional resistance. Again, it's important to remember that global activity is not 100% desired at this point. And if your client has enough stability on one leg, you can use the box test as another method of training. You can use these pulsed, so 5-10 second holds, 5-10 second break, back up, repeat the process. Finally, you want to bring it all together. You can progress to a fuller range of motion. You can start in supine and go from the floor all the way back. You can start in prone with your feet elevated, complete full range, maybe even standing. limit gravity first for the most part. And then ultimately our goal is to get some resistance added to the foot of the ankle via a cable column or a band. So a few key things to remember. The psoas is a lot more complicated than just being a hip flexor. The psoas can be impacted by numerous structures, those in the deep front line, the foot and ankle potentially. Correction of psoas dysfunction then requires a multi-step process that addresses multiple tissues. What I didn't discuss at all, because it may be out of our scope of practice, is if somebody's coming in with psoas dysfunction, it may not be. I mentioned the deep front line being a problem or a potential problem in psoas activity. So it may be smart to refer out to somebody who has a better understanding of the deep front line than you trying to have them foam roll tib posterior or something of that nature. So a few further reading articles, definitely check them out. Very cool stuff about the psoas, some from some of the big names now in the spinal health community. I'm Carson Boddicker. I own Boddicker Performance, BoddiCkerPerformance.com. I hope you enjoyed the secrets of the psoas, and definitely stop by every now and again. I'm going to keep trying to give you guys